That's right. Welcome in. Welcome back to a Ride Your Strengths edition of the Always Irish Show. As always, you can find the program on YouTube. Do it. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I'd appreciate it very much. Give the video a thumbs up if you approve of the content. I'd appreciate that as well. Twitter, search bar Always Irish or at Always Irish Inc. Emails, alwaysirishindy@gmail.com. Audio only anywhere you want me. You can get me. Call in line 312-988-15. Have your point heard and seen, okay? So, I think most of Notre Dame Nation is going to feel pretty good about our defense overall entering the 2022 season. It's been the backbone strength of the program since 2017, 5 full years. This part of the program has carried them. Now, while I have specific questions about little things, interior D-line bulk and depth, and perhaps how the secondary is going to hold up against Ohio State week 1, those are still questions and legitimate ones that I and others have. But I still overall expect this unit to more than hold their own over the course of the year. And I think most Notre Dame fans would tend to agree. Offensively, however, we all know Notre Dame has some major strides to make to win the biggest games they play and eventually, ideally, win some playoff ball games. This is not an opinion, but it is a fact based on the results we've seen in these ball games. Okay? Elite quarterback play is required to win these games with regularity. And of course, everybody knows we're in hot pursuit as we speak of one of those recruits, Dante. A great physical, athletic, deep, fast, wide receiving core is also needed to win playoff games. We've seen it. Again, I do not think that's up for debate or opinion. That's what I've seen win these games against everybody else and against us. We need to work on that, and we are. Carnell Tate, I know everybody has their opinion. Some people think we're out of it. Braylon James, okay, so you got some good stuff going on, but it's still very much a work in progress. These works in progress, I do not expect to be fully addressed and adequate next year. I think it's going to take some time. So looking at the Notre Dame offense in 2022, knowing we have a lack of talent and depth in the wide receiver room and a talented but very inexperienced quarterback, how can Notre Dame ride the defense and then maximize the offensive output this year? The answer to me is easy. You have to lean on your strengths to make everything else easier to work through. Start at the offensive line. Sheriff Harry is back in town. One of, if not the most respected line coaches in the entire sport, college or pro. All Christophic, Patterson, Lugg, Fisher. They're going to move people. And they're going to be very mean while they move people. And unlike last year, I think they're going to do it right away. Not halfway through this season, wake up. Right away. Physical and nasty. This is a major strength. Tight end Michael Mayer. If he's not the best one in the country, he's got to be 1A. I say it all the time. There's no amount of passes that go to Michael Mayer that I'm going to sit on my couch and say, too many tries. That number doesn't exist. That number doesn't exist. So, you're going to have, in my estimation, a very physical, capable Notre Dame offensive line right away, even against Ohio State. You have one of the best tight ends in the country. And if a backup, Tim, could step up, Ballman, Evans, Barong had an ACL. But if another guy could step up behind Mayer, this group is a mega strength. Then we get to my favorite position group right now in the entire team, and it's the running backs. Diggs, Estime, Tyree, Price are all dynamic in their own ways. They can all be deployed for maximum defensive confusion if Tom Rees manages the dynamic right. These three units, I believe, will be huge strengths. And they need to do everything they can to maximize their output to assist whoever the young quarterback is and the very questionable depth and skill level of the wide receiver room that we're going to have to navigate 2022 with. The better and more dynamic these three groups can be, the easier life's going to be for Buckner and these wide receivers to make plays. Buckner's legs will also aid in this effort. And that is very much a strength that blends in with the other three strong groups I already mentioned. If these three groups I expect to be very solid, are indeed exceptional and more than solid, it's going to open up all sorts of passing lanes for the new quarterback and make it easier for these wide receivers to show what they could do and shut everybody up like me, who's ragging on that room and their depth. One thing I want to see attitude from these receivers. I want them mad and offended that all of us had talked about their group as a weakness. I hope they have something to prove. Not only for themselves, but for all of us. I hope they do. I hope that group has a chip on their shoulder. I hope they're sick and tired of all of us calling their group a weakness. So, while I get and totally understand that much of the focus is going to be on the quarterback specifically and the wide receivers, I actually think the key to tying this all together is for the strengths to cover up some of those weaknesses enough that they don't look like obvious weaknesses for very long. Now, the good news is, I think this will likely only be an issue for maybe this year, maybe some of the next year. But then you should be in a position through proper recruiting and development to have strength on strength on strength on strength. That's what you need. All those groups to be plus groups. Offensive line, tight ends, running backs, wide receiver, cherry on top. Great quarterback play. Great quarterback play. So, to me, I just know how this goes. All the focus is going to be on those areas that we have doubts about. Those areas where the depth and the production is questionable. A new quarterback, that's the engine of your offense. All of that stuff is going to get a lot of eyeballs and a lot of articles, a lot of YouTube, all of that. But I really do think the better those other three groups are, the better these struggling ones are going to look. So I'm looking for our strengths to be mega strengths and help pull along, speed up the developmental curve of the areas that we feel are a little bit behind or they are not at the physical level Marcus sees them being in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So I think leaning on your strengths to open up and ease this transition for the other areas is key. And you have some pieces there that you could do some really cool stuff with. You could do that running back group. You could get so creative with the slightly overlapping yet divergent skill sets they have. You could have two backs back there at the same time, making the defense wonder who's getting a handoff, who's going out for a pass, who's blocking, then going out for a pass. You could cause mega confusion with that group. Get that defense all worried about them. Guess who's open right over the middle of the seam? The monster known as Michael Mayer. You get all that attention on those groups. The offensive line's doing a good job. Guess who's open then? Some of those wide receivers. So those strengths, to me, are a major key in getting these other groups up to speed. And I expect it to happen. So if Marcus and Reese find a way to successfully navigate this dynamic in 2022 to where things start to blend together, some of our strengths cover for some of the weaknesses while they're being worked on, that is a great sign that things are heading in the right direction in South Bend. So that's what I'm looking for. Notre Dame is not quite at that level where I see them eye to eye with the teams winning playoff games. But the way Marcus recruits, it might not take us that long to get to that level. This next year is going to be a tricky one. He's got to try and fill in what he could fill in with not even a full year of recruiting. That's a tough ask. So ride your strengths to turn your weaknesses into strengths as well. Notre Dame's got some really good talent in these three areas on the offense that I think could be dynamite. Use them, use them, use them. Help bring the whole operation along. Ride your strengths in 2022. Have a good one.